technology can do some really, really crazy things like we just witnessed. It's not the first time that's happened to the city of Trinidad. We had it happen to us once before, so we're going to be delayed a little bit in time. We will continue on. Hopefully, it does not happen again. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Glorioso for him to continue.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, I've been asked to hold on just a minute. If they could pull back up my graph that left off on burglary. I heard that. Okay. Are they going to be able to get me on, or?
Yeah, I'll just put that in.
Let's see.
There we go.
Okay, and I think we were on burglary, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so burglary, and let me explain my draft. I got from 20 to 21. Our agency's been reporting to NIBRS the whole time I've been there. So I showed it from 20 to 21, and then I show the 5-year average up in the corner, and then I show comparison versus the 5-year average to 2021. That's how we do it. So as you can see, the burglary there shows a decrease. A couple of high years, like 216 and 217, and sadly, you can contribute most of those to one individual that did most of those burglaries. Robbery, we've been up and down with robbery. You can see a big year there in 16 and 17. Last year we had 8. I wrote a comment there that the individual that was responsible for those was also charged and arrested, and that's a 28% decrease for robbery. Larceny, which is theft, the 5-year average is 281. For 2021 is 208. Again, 16 and 17, those were a couple of tough years for us. Those were high, 327, 377. Motor vehicle theft. You can see we have a 49% increase on this one, and a lot of those are vehicles that are left running. Unfortunately, people leave those running and make it super easy to take. Some of those are also taken by a person that they know and ultimately returned, but that shows an increase. Criminal mischief is a 24% decrease. For 2021, we had 85. The 5-year average is 105. Serious assault went up. It's a 10% increase. And it's kind of hard to say how serious assault plays out and why those numbers go up and down. But we do have an increase compared to our 5-year average there. Sexual assault is also an increase, and 2021 saw 15. Our 5-year average is 6. That's a considerable increase. Arrests, we have a 6% increase. We had 983 for 2021 versus the 5-year average of 926. Calls for service are a decrease. And I think I can attribute that to that we were just doing less, because our calls for service also include officer contact, officer initiated calls. So 2020 and 2021 were odd years, and we were probably doing less contacts, so that could contribute to that. This page here shows drugs seized, and I tried to get my total numbers for 2021. Unfortunately, we just turned in our numbers to CBI yesterday, so they don't have those numbers tallied yet. But I had a meeting with council back in October, and I was specifically targeting what our dogs had done. Our department was fortunate to get 2 dogs bought and paid for, 2 officers trained with those dogs. And these are the drugs and arrests that were attributed to those canines. So that's been a huge investment for the city, and I think it's paying off, and it's going to continue to pay off. So I wanted to show those numbers just to take a look at them about the amount of drugs we've taken out. 653.6 grams of drugs were seized, and 14 individuals were arrested for the charge of those drugs. So that's a pretty good number just for the dogs. Last page there is our chain of command on our total officers. I'm always getting asked how many officers serve our public. We're 27 sworn officers serve the entire city of Trinidad. Of those 27, 5 of those officers are brand new. They just came out of the academy in December. So they're on the streets. They got another 20 weeks in a car with another officer, and then we'll be almost full staff. I still am missing 2. We have a vacancy in patrol and 1 in the detective division right now. So I think that's my 5 minutes. And do we have any questions now or later? Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Next up is going to be our sheriff. He's here today. Going to come forward, and what we'll do is we're going to go through the criminal justice, and then we're going to go back to, and we'll have all of the representatives do their presentations after that section, and then we'll go on to the opioid settlements and other stuff that's going to be having representatives talk about.
Good morning. Hopefully I'm safe. I just have paper. So. First of all, I'd like to thank the county commissioners and their administration. First off, they've helped us extremely this year to provide better funding, equipment, to provide better service for this community. So I'd like to start off by thanking them for all their teamwork and support. Because without that, I wouldn't be where we're at with some of our goals that we want to achieve this year and further in the future. So I want to start off by saying that, and also I want to commend my staff. We've worked through this COVID pandemic. Last year, it's been really tough dealing with illnesses. We went through a COVID outbreak in our jail. My staff showed up. They worked, and I want the community to know how hard they work, put their health and their safety on the line. So this county has been blessed with a lot of dedicated people that I have working for us. So I just want to make that people aware that this is what's going on. They showed up. They didn't call in sick. I had a lot of staff go out, but they got through it and they came back to work. So they need to be commended for that, and I do that on a daily basis. So first of all, what we have, I'm just going to go through some quick numbers. We've had a total of 5,769 calls for service just within the county alone. And my staff I have is 14 detention and about 9 patrol deputies, so that's a lot of calls. But we get through as best as we can. So some of the main calls that we deal with are obviously assaults, burglaries, controlled substances, damage to property, a lot of fraud going on lately, especially with credit cards and other things like that, but that's gone up. I don't have a lot of percentages, but I do have these available if anybody needs them. Stolen autos, sexual assaults, property crimes, and thefts, those are the main ones, basically kind of what the city deals with. Another issue I'd like to address is the marijuana illegal growing in our county. The last 3 years, we've taken a total of $8,436,800 worth of marijuana illegally off the street, according to the street value. That's quite a bit considering how much staff that I have and how much hard they work. But what we're doing with that is we've been obtaining gray and black marijuana grants, but they have continually gone down. So for instance, the first year we applied, we were granted $56,000. And so that following year, we were able to conduct at least 51 investigations, 51, and we had 6 eradication operations. We eradicated nearly 5,900 plants that year and a total street value of $5,800,000. So what we're getting now is the state is asking, and I'd like to address this to some of the representatives, is they're saying that we're not using this money and they're wanting to know why it's getting. So our last grant this year we got 5,800. That's compared to 56,000 the first. So I want to show that these numbers, we are using this and we are making a difference in our community. So I am working on that with our Sheriff's Association to see if we can continue to get better funding for that. And I think a lot of that numbers have gone down this year due to the reduction in the funding. And also the people are getting aware that we're doing this and hopefully avoiding our area and doing their stuff somewhere else. So. In one of the guidelines, it was asked if I could address what the Sheriff's Office and the Police Department are doing together. Just this year, the Chief and I spoke. We are working on obtaining better software for our jail. We work, our reporting system is an e-force reporting system. We both belong to that. So I asked him if they would assist us in getting jail management. So they are providing some funding. And what that's going to do is going to provide better communication. We can see reports, we can expedite our booking process, better communication through, we can obtain their reports, we can see who's doing what in the city, county. Because not only will they do crimes here, they'll go out in the county and do the same thing, so we can kind of compare, exchange notes. So that's kind of stuff we're doing together to help this community. But other than that, that's about all I have.
Thank you, Sheriff Navarre. And one thing that I was glad to hear is that you and Chief Glorioso are working together to try to solve some of the crime issues that we have in the area. So at this time, I'd like to invite District Attorney Mr. Solano up, please.
Thank you all very much. Let me first of all indicate, Judge Gerbrock, I know you're next, and I understand you may have reported the hack, which I truly appreciated. It allowed me to be here on time because it's delayed. But I did tell Mr. Kryman that right now I can't eliminate you as a suspect, although I hope very quickly to be able to do so. I am very pleased to be here, and I'll say it in a number of different ways. First of all, I want to thank the voters in Los Animas in 2017 and now again in 2021 because two things happened. One is the voters approved a public safety tax that creates a dedicated revenue stream to help fund the DA's office. The original version of that proposition or that referendum had a 10-year sunset. Working with the county commissioners, we went back to the voters this last November, and they've removed the sunset, which means that from now forward, the district attorney's office does not necessarily have to compete with other agencies for the limited other tax revenues to support what's going on. Second part of that is there is, at least right now, excess funds that the county commissioners will be able to use for other public safety purposes. And so it's an added addition to bringing public safety to Los Angeles County. I also want to thank the city of Trinidad, because when I first got here, talking about the dire times that we were having, limited tax resources, the county commissioners had to do tax cuts or cuts for budgets all across the county government. And the DA's office was not exempt. We were cut by $50,000. The city of Trinidad council stepped up and added in $50,000 that first year. The second year, while we were still in transition, they added another $25,000. That helped the office at least try to stabilize. And now with the added revenues, I'm optimistic as to what we can accomplish, especially working with and the Trinidad Police Department, who I will tell you, given the experience I have in Huerfano County, both meet all of their obligations in terms of timely investigating, timely providing information to the DA's office, and properly labeling and sending evidence for testing by the CBI. Unfortunately, that's not happening in the other county that's in the 3rd Judicial District, and we hope to correct that. Let me talk a little bit about what we've been able to accomplish, and I was glad to hear a part of Chief Glorioso's comments. When it comes to homicides, we have had more homicides in the last 5 years than actually preceding and going all the way back to, I think, 2012 was the last time we had a homicide in the 3rd Judicial District, and even further. But in addition to handling the homicides, the burglaries that Chief Glorioso was talking about, we're at an all-time high. And in fact, we arrested with Sheriff Navarrete in the work of the Trinidad Police Department an individual who we believe was the kingpin of the burglaries. We were able to, because we charged him with habitual sentence enhancers, and I'll describe that later, to get a 30-year sentence for that individual. The first time since going back to 1992, except for homicides and sexual assaults, a sentence of that nature. That broke the back, I think, of the ring that was here. Same thing happened in 2017 and 2018. We targeted the robberies and particular individuals who law enforcement suspected were the chief ringleaders in that area. We didn't get necessarily a 30-year sentence, but we've got a number of sentences. I think that's part of the reason why the numbers are down. I point that out because the investments the voters have given to the DA's office and now to public safety, I think is showing some returns. So let me talk a little bit about some of the numbers. And Judge Gerbach, I'm sure, will talk about it. COVID has had not only a dramatic effect on law enforcement, but on the courts and the DA's office. Our numbers in terms of cases have gone down in the aggregate, but some of the types of cases that we're seeing are directly responsible or responsive to the fact that people are closed in and don't have the opportunity to get out. By that I mean we're seeing more sexual assaults, domestic violence tied to all of that, and we have individuals in the office who are now developing prosecutorial expertise in the area of sexual assault. We just in Huerfano County got a conviction and a sentence in excess of 30 years on a sexual assault case. Unfortunately, we are seeing more sexual assaults on children being reported, being investigated, and we're prosecuting. So let me talk to you about some of the numbers. In 2017, in terms of felony cases, I personally handled 269 cases here in Los Angeles. In 2018, that number went up to 307 felony cases. 2019, that number was 326 felony cases, and I handled 324 felony cases in that year in Huerfano. Both counties saw an increase in the rate of crime and the number of felony cases. 2020, the pandemic hit. And in terms of felony cases, we had 274 filed cases in Los Angeles County. 221, the number is, and I just got this number, 250 felony cases. Again, I think that's a combination of several things. Some of the types of crimes are impacted because criminals are not necessarily able to get out. But I think the other piece of it, as the chief and I think the sheriff have said, is because we are working more aggressively and harder on the cases we have. We're not eliminating crime, but we're sending a message to the criminal defendants that us joining with the support of the taxpayer are bringing responsive prosecutions to Los Angeles County. Some of the things that I think show that is with the help of Chief Judge Gearbrock, we convened a grand jury. First time in over 50 years, a grand jury convened and an indictment returned on a homicide case, which was investigated by the Trinidad Police Department. We spent, I think it was over 18 months, methodically going through the investigation and used the vehicle of the grand jury to not only bring about an indictment, but to lock in the testimony of some potential witnesses, not subjects or targets, so that when we go to trial, we will have locked in the kind of evidence we need together with the CBI's work and the Trinidad Police Department's work. The other thing that has been going on is I have brought, my staff has started utilizing a habitual sentence enhancing charging. What that means is for career felons, when we charge it, if we convict and they've had 3 or more prior felonies, the sentence that must mandatorily be imposed is 4 times the maximum sentence that typically would have happened. So you could take a 24-year sentence and turn that into over 76 years worth of sentence. We have the little habitual, which we call it, is for a 2-time felon when the felonies have been committed within the last 10 years. We are using that more and more, not only as a charging mechanism, but we're also obtaining convictions, even if it's to a lesser offense, so that the individual will agree that he is a habitual offender, is sentenced as such, even if it's to a lower level, 6 years or so. But what that does is it sends a message throughout the state and even nationally that that person, if he commits another felony, has previously been adjudicated to be a habitual offender and is subject to the sentence enhancement that I'm talking about in terms of either 3 times or 4 times, whatever they're convicted of. The last piece I want to say is I think everyone has been patient, and I'll say it in this way. As some of you may know, I have probably been a full-time prosecutor and not necessarily the district attorney for the 3rd Judicial District. And when I say that, ever since 2018, because of the shortfall in funding in Huerfano County, I have had to be a full-time prosecutor there and not able to be the district attorney in the complete way that I believe I should be. But I've announced to the Huerfano County Commissioners, beginning this year, I'm going to be the DA for the 3rd Judicial District, overseeing prosecutions in both counties. I will do that in a way that will not compromise the work in Huerfano County, will not take Los Animas County funds under Voter 1A and use for Huerfano County, although the county commissioners tried in litigation to get that money. But I am back. I'm going to finish this term working hard with our staff, funded the way we are in Los Animas, to continue the progress we're making in terms of trying to make our community safer. And that, I believe, enhances economic development as well as safety and security. Those are the comments I had. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to have Chief Judge Leslie Gerbrock do a remote presentation, please.
Morning, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay. My apologies for not being there. I came down with some kind of crud last night and felt it was best to self-isolate until I start feeling better. I know we're behind. I'm going to go through my comments as quickly as I can. I first want to say that throughout all of COVID, we have managed to keep the courts open to provide service to the community that needs it. However, all of our 4 courts, well, our 2 courts in Los Animas County, do all of our courts by WebEx, which means that it's similar to Zoom, but it's hopefully more secure. And I would encourage anyone who would like to observe court to go to our website, and that's www.courts.state.co.us. Go to the 3rd Judicial District. Each judge has a WebEx personal court platform, and I encourage people to jump on, watch hearings. We are doing a lot of things in person. However, I do have a chief judge order that masks are mandatory on the 3rd floor of the courthouse, and in court we are observing 6 feet of social distancing. So for my courtroom, I can put more people in there and observe the 6 feet of social distancing. In the county courtroom, it's smaller, not as much. You may not be surprised that much of what you read on social media as to what happened in the courts or with a particular case is not accurate. It's not complete. And I encourage people, if they have cases they want to follow, to actually attend a court hearing before comments are made as to what happened, because it's often, like I said, incomplete. We are still conducting jury trials. As a chief judge, I'm working closely with the health department and with my management team to determine. We did have a period of time in 2020 that we suspended jury trials. It's really important to me that our courts remain open. We have people with emergencies that need court services. Defendants that are charged with crimes have a right to have their jury trial. Victims have a right to have their case concluded, but it is a constant balancing act between safety of my staff as well as the public and making sure people's constitutional rights are not violated. I won't talk real quickly about the case stats because the chief and the sheriff and Mr. Solano did that. Mr. Solano is right. Our domestic violence filings are up 40% from July 1st of 2020 to June 30th of 21. Interestingly enough, our DUI filings are down. I guess people are staying home, getting drunk, and beating up the people that they love. My truancy cases did spike significantly in 2020, but they have now leveled off a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about some of the legislative changes that have happened. Senate Bill 19-108, juveniles can no longer be detained on a bond. Our district court judges are required to either release them or keep them in custody on a no bond hold. I can't keep juveniles in custody on a no bond hold unless I make a specific finding that they are a substantial risk of serious harm to others or a substantial flight risk. And just to put that in people's terms, if we have a juvenile that's running amok downtown, for example, busting out property business owners' plate glass windows, that does not qualify as a substantial risk of harm to others because it's a property crime. So when people wonder why juveniles are not being detained, we always have to remember that everyone that's arrested and charged with a crime is innocent until proven guilty. And with this new juvenile legislation, it is extremely difficult to hold a juvenile in any kind of detention while their case is pending. And that's hard for people to understand, but we do have to follow the laws that the legislature has enacted. I also just want to throw out there that there's some potential legislation being considered, it's not been passed yet, that's going to require every judicial district to develop a local shelter to hold a juvenile. We don't have any kind of a detention facility in the 3rd Judicial District. If we do have a juvenile that has to be detained, they're being held in Pueblo at the Pueblo Youth Detention Facility. And of course, my first concern when I hear about that is if the legislature is going to make us develop a shelter to hold a juvenile, is the legislature going to give us money in order to do that? So that's something that we're watching very, very, very closely. Mr. Solano did talk a little bit about some of the sentences that have been imposed. All judges, for every conviction, we have specific sentencing guidelines, and we have to follow that. I want to talk about our probation department just for a moment. Our probation department is excellent, and when people hear that someone has been placed on probation, I would like for the community to understand that our folks, they're our folks. They're our Trinidad folks. Our defendants are born and raised and have family in Trinidad, and they're not going anywhere. They're not leaving our community. Probation is not an easy ride. Our probation department, our probation officers work really, really hard. They have guidelines, everything from minimal supervision to daily supervision. Department of Corrections, especially since COVID started, is releasing people at a very rapid rate. So as judges, as district court judges, myself and Judge McKisson, when we're looking at issuing a sentence for a convicted felon, we have to decide, is this person going to Department of Corrections? How soon are they going to be paroled? And you know what? They're coming back to Trinidad. They're not going to parole to Kansas or Idaho or someplace. Our parole officer has been, he's been our parole officer for a really long time, and I don't know what his numbers are, but I know he is really, really overworked. He has a lot of cases. If I want eyes on somebody, I want my probation department to have eyes on them, not the parole officer, because he has too many people, he has too wide of a region, and so it's really a balancing act. I have to look at if someone is eligible for an 18-month Department of Corrections sentence, and they have been in custody, and they're already getting 6 months of pre-sentence confinement, which by law has to be provided to them. How long are they actually going to be in Department of Corrections before they come back to our community? And then are they going to be supervised? It might be better for our community to place them on probation, put them in treatment, and really have eyes on them. Our most recent success rate for our probationers in the last year has been 74%. That's pretty high. What we are seeing is heroin and opiates is high in our community, as it is everywhere, and it's being closely followed by meth. My last comments are, if someone asked me to give my opinion on how to prevent crime in less than 5 words, I would say formal education. We have to support our schools. We have to get our kids educated. I'm not going to go through all the data, but the data will show us over and over and over again. If we can get our kids a high school education, the crime rate is less, they will find jobs, their unplanned pregnancy is less. It just is better for them as well as our community. So I really think that we need to support our education system as much as we can. And that, I know that was a really quick overview, but I know that we're very, very far behind. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for allowing me to appear.
Judge, thank you for the information. As we're all very concerned about crime, and that's the reason why, excuse me, why we wanted to bring in representatives that involve all of crime prevention, all the way from the police department, sheriff department, district attorney's office, and judge to the judge. So, like I said, we're happy that they were able to be here. Before I move on, I just wanted to thank a few people that helped really work hard to put this together. We have Debbie Wagner. She's a lobbyist from Denver. She worked very hard. Victor Gutierrez. And Kim. She's there. And in the background, she's operating all this is Audra Garrett. So give them a round of applause. Now we're going to switch over to our representatives. At this time, I'd like to have our state senator, Mr. Cleve Simpson, come forward, please.
I'm going to take that out because I don't like standing behind that podium, but thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Appreciate the opportunity to come and be with you all today and talk about some legislative issues. So I messed the camera up, I know that. And Dr. Epper, thank you for hosting and allowing us to use the facility today. So it's again an honor and a privilege to work on your all's behalf at the state capitol. I find myself in this really unique position of just about a year ago, I was sworn in as a state senator for Senate District 35, representing 16 counties, including Los Animas. About a year from now, the assignment will change, and I'll be the state senator for Senate District number 6, which won't include Los Animas County. So it's kind of because of census and redistricting. My role will change effective about a year from now. So I always feel like I was born and raised in Alamosa, so I've always had a connection to Los Animas County and Trinidad in particular. So officially I represent some other counties, but I always know you have an advocate at the state capitol for Los Animas County. So a couple things to keep it kind of brief before I forget to the district judge's comments about unfunded mandates. I'm certainly sensitive to those, whether it's local government, school districts, or the judicial system. I certainly am appreciative and sensitive to the actions of the state legislature when it comes to unfunded mandates. So thank you for those comments. Look, I think looking forward, I was going to talk a little bit about kind of the opportunities likely will unfold at the Capitol this year. I guess we're in a fortunate position maybe that the economic forecast for the state is certainly much more positive than it was even a year ago at this time. I was elected in November under the presumption that, after election, we had just come through a budget reduction at the state of about over $3 billion. And in November of 2020, the presumption was we probably have to trim another $1 billion out of the budget. Quite the opposite was true last year. We didn't have to trim $1 billion. We had close to $1 billion more in revenue. So an economic forecast that came out in December of this year actually say the state's live, we will hit our TABOR limit this year. So there was an expectation we wouldn't reach those TABOR limits for 2 or 3 or maybe 5 years. So the recovery's been pretty substantial and pretty rapid. And on the heels of that, the federal funding pool has been pretty significant as well. I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee at the Senate and volunteered to serve this summer on a behavioral health task force. Last session, the legislature set aside about $450 million dedicated towards transforming the behavioral health system. And a lot of discussions, particularly this morning, about crime and the judicial system. I know there's a direct connection to behavioral health issues in this state. The criminal justice system is consumed with folks that have behavioral health issues and probably don't need to be or shouldn't be incarcerated. They need another avenue. So I spent yesterday what will likely be the last meeting of that behavioral health task force, and we develop a series of recommendations that then have the potential to become legislation. And really, I don't want to oversimplify this, but it really boils down to, in this state, we don't have capacity. We don't have infrastructure. We don't have enough beds to support the folks that need the help. And then we don't have the workforce to to fill those needs. So I think you could spend all of the $450 million in those two pools. But I also try to balance that with, I know there are programs that are preventative in nature that can help keep people out of the system to begin with. So you'll see, I'm sure you'll see an abundance of pieces of legislation come out. The task force had no bill drafting authority, so we submit a report with all these suggestions on how to spend $450 million, and you can, again, kind of lump them in those three kind of categories. Along that same path, there was also a task force working on affordable housing for the state, and that's another $400 and some million. And then there was a third task force, an economic recovery task force, that had about $800 million. So I'm happy to say, I think Representative Holtorf is on Zoom. He and I this week submitted on behalf of Trinidad State College, a request to dip into that $800 million to support refurbishment of a number of the dormitories here. So that was between $6 and $9 million, which I know is greatly needed. Dr. Epper she made it really easy for me to make the application, and it flowed really well and made a really strong case. I'm very hopeful some of those economic recovery fund dollars will flow here to Trinidad State. So for me personally, water is a key topic for me in Department of Natural Resources. So I'm carrying a bill about water issues, particularly groundwater issues in the San Luis Valley and the Republican River. People sometimes, so I'm going to jump around here a little bit, don't think about, folks in Los Animas County live in the WUI, the wildland urban interface, and, particularly what happened in Boulder County last week and the devastation there reminded me again of about I have an abundance of folks and constituents all across Senate District 35 that are always at the risk of, being caught up in wildland fires. And we'll put forward a piece of legislation that offers tax credits for people that can prove they've worked through the local fire departments to make their homes more defensible, the defensible space. So there's and there'll be abundance of issues and topics unfold, I'm sure, at the state capitol this year. Again, those economic recovery and affordable housing and healthcare or behavioral health issues will dominate a bunch of the discussion going forward. So I think that's what I'll probably wrap up with, Mr. Mayor. And again, it's such an honor and a privilege to work for all of you on your behalf at the state capitol. So please always feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Sorry, I messed that up, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Senator, for the information. This time I'd like to remote for State Representative Richard Holtorf.
Thank you, Mayor Pico, and thank you to all the good people down south in Los Animas County and in Trinidad. First thing I'd like to say is, much like Senator Simpson with redistricting, come January 1st, 2023, I will be drawn out of Southeast Colorado and House District 64, and I will be drawn into a new district, which is House District 63, and it will encompass northeastern Colorado. Having said that, I will tell you I worked for you and all the people in House District 63 till December 31st, 2022, and I will not let anybody down in that district. I apologize for not making the long trip down south. I'd like to do that, but we had a winter storm come through here, and it tied everything up in my community here in Washington County. I'd like to say first, Sheriff Navarrete, with respect to your reduction in grant funding, I want you to do something. I know you work with the Colorado Sheriff's Association, and I understand the importance of your trade organizations and their efforts at the state capitol. But I will tell you, and all of you for that matter, that if you've got an issue that is that acute, you need to send that right to both Senator Simpson and myself, and also to your trade organizations. But so we can put some pressure, some legislative pressure to bear on the problem. The reality is there's not a lack of grant money out there in Colorado. The reality is it's your priorities. We were awash with money last year, and as Senator Simpson said, we're going to be awash with money this year. It's just where do you want to invest that money in the state and in our communities? So help us help you by reaching out to us, and feel free to reach out directly or through your lobby or through your trade organizations. I don't care, but you have to reach out to us because a lot of things get lost in translation. I'd really like to know, I'd like to see the trend lines, and I want to know more specifically, because we all know that as you raise taxes on legal marijuana, and I've got friends that are in that space, as you raise taxes on legal marijuana, there is an inflection point that people will default, especially people that don't have a lot of money, that are not middle and high income recreational users. They'll go to the black market. And that only drives the black market up and increases illegal marijuana, not only trade and use, but proliferation of all the other things that may go with that. So that's a tightrope walk that we walk here in Colorado. Legal drug distributors are very happy that that has happened, because now, unfortunately, they're going to have more business. I took economics in college, and it's pretty simple to understand. I'm going to transition out of the 2022 session. These American Recovery Act funds are real. There's a big push to leverage those at the state capitol. And I think that Southern Colorado needs to be thinking very actively about how they can leverage those dollars, both state and federal, and also matching grant funds. Now, I heard the good news about how there's going to be a little excess funding in Los Angeles County due to the economic activity and some benefits. Please consider, for you county planners, how you can leverage those grants on a cost share basis to maximize the return in your communities. I know that takes a lot of time, and it takes staff, and it takes a lot of effort, but it will benefit you in the long run if you do that. And both Senator Simpson and I both will be glad to help you if you need to navigate some of those agencies and also make phone calls on your behalf. Although we have no direct authority to influence any of that, indirectly we can talk to our colleagues and friends and ask them to take a good look at certain projects and give further explanation on why those projects are important to the communities we represent. With respect to the Justice Center detention legislation that may be coming through, I would like for your county to tell us what's that going to cost. What's that going to cost? So we can go back and tell the State General Assembly, hey, in Los Angeles County, this is what that's going to cost. Have you allocated money for that? And I already know the answer is going to be, no, we haven't. For the 65 counties or whatever the number of judicial districts we have, I'm pretty sure that the funding has not been allocated, which would be hundreds of millions, I'm sure hundreds of millions of dollars to do that if they're not already in place. So that's a conversation that Senator Simpson and I need to have this session at the Capitol. I will tell you that I'm encouraging parallel action. So work through your legislators, work through your trade organizations in parallel fashion so we can maximize our efforts to support you folks down there. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has a question to me, if not, you can reach me at richard.holtorf.house@state.co.us and actively communicate with us so we can help you to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Ms. Scholtorf, questions and answers will come at the end of the meeting, so hang tight with us. As you can see, that's the real importance of having our state representatives here with us today because we can hear directly from them what they're doing, and they can hear what we're faced with. One of the things that I will say is that Trinidad did in 2018 is we hired a lobbyist, and we have made many but many trips to Denver to meet with our representatives, not only our individual representatives, but representatives from across the state. And I've done that. Some of our city council people have done it. I know the county commissioners have done that. So I think you have a very well working elected officials group here in Los Angeles County. Now let's go ahead and move over to Miss Erin Minks from Senator Bennett's office.
Good morning. Is it still morning? I think it is. Thank you, Mayor Rico, for the invitation to be a part of this session today. I know you guys have done this a number of years now, and we always appreciate the opportunity to come down to your community and be a part of this really healthy discussion. This is a great cross-section of what's going on in your community and your county. So my name is Erin, and I work for Michael Bennett out of Alamosa. I am not an urban person. I don't live on an interstate, so it's kind of nice to come visit you guys because honestly, be grateful that you do have an interstate. But obviously, Dr. Eppers knows that a big part of where her school is does not include that, so it's a little bit more exciting this time of year. But so I cover 8 counties for Senator Bennett out of Alamosa, and I currently am also helping cover Southeast Colorado while we're finding someone to staff our Pueblo office. So if anybody knows of anybody who's interested in this work, please just let me know. We're looking for some candidates interested in covering this region for Senator Bennett. So also want to acknowledge Commissioner Felix Lopez is involved with working with our offices through his role with NACO. And I don't know if you all are aware of that, but working with Congress involves way more grassroots work than you would ever think. And we're not that far away. Your senator actually has a person, me, whose job it is to drive all over, get connected in meetings, be on the phone, be accessible to all of you, to be best informed about what matters to you at as an individual constituent level, whether you have an IRS, VA, Social Security case, whether you have a public lands issue with the Forest Service. Those are all things that I actually work on wearing my constituent services hat for Michael, but I also do rural policy for him. So your county commissioners, especially Commissioner Lopez, through his role with the National Association of Counties, you have a big voice in Los Angeles County and Trinidad at the national level and at the state level. And your commissioners are very thoughtful with us. Mayor Rico is very thoughtful with us. So I would encourage any of you in the hats that you wear, because if you're anything like Alamosa, you are part of the same 10 people. You are the same people that run, just like Cleve is. You have your official title that you do during the day, and then you're also part of many other efforts. But I thought today would be most helpful to talk a little bit about Senator Bennett and kind of state the obvious. He's on 3 committees, and the 2 that probably matter the most to you guys is he's on the Senate Ag Committee. And he's been there so long in office. He got elected in 2009. He was appointed to Ken Salazar's seat when Senator Salazar became Secretary of Interior. So Michael's the most senior senator that Colorado has had in decades. So we're pretty excited to see that transform. But so he's on the Senate Ag Committee, and he's actually the chair of the Forestry Subcommittee. So we have an outsized influence on Forest Service policy and funding. So I was just talking to Commissioner Lopez here about some of the forest health issues you guys have, probably closer to your boundary near Aguilar in that area. But it's a major issue for Colorado, and our office is proud to have a chance to work on that. Also, the Farm Bill rewrite is coming up. And I imagine a number of you in your many hats that you wear also have an ag business of some sort, or you work in rural development, you work in rural economic development. That's all pieces of the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is a monumentally influential piece of legislation that's only worked on every 5 years that Michael will be helping work on starting probably next year. So you should consider us a resource for any existing USDA programs that you've used or changes you want to see and how those programs are working for you. Senator Bennett is also on the Senate Finance Committee, which means he has an outsized role on tax policy. So you're going to see him showing leadership on behalf of Colorado in that field, and that's something that he's also really involved in. He's also on the Select Committee on Intelligence, so he has some international roles there. But really, since the pandemic, I can speak to this, and I think you'll also hear this from Antonio, our work has been responding to all of you. Our work on behalf of the pandemic has literally been first making a transition physically to completely relocating our entire offices to an online presence like we're doing here today. I think we just kind of go without, we don't really call out the obvious in a group like this because we've all made this massive adjustment, but we should also be applauding ourselves for the adjustments that we've made to go forward and function. And as a Senate office, I am part of a team that has a DC office, a state office, and 6 regional offices around Colorado. So at this point, we were very involved in getting the CARES Act funding through. I don't know if Sheriff's Department or the DA's office or police departments, if you guys were able to get any of that support funding just for operational pieces there. We also worked closely on the rescue plan that passed last March, and a lot of that funding is coming to you in many different ways. Unfortunately, once it hits the state, it gets called something else, even though it's rescue plan money. The deadlines are the same, but that's another piece, another bucket of funding that those of you who work in the municipal and county administration can help probably break this down better than I. But this is other fairly flexible funding for state and local governments that the senator was heard from counties loud and clear the first time around. Counties were very clear that they wanted the funding directly to them and not through the state. So in response to that, the rescue plan money that came in March goes directly to your state and local governments. So Trinidad got a direct allocation, Los Angeles County. And those funds, I would defer to you in the elected office as to how you're going to consider spending those funds. But that was also something that was a response. Again, the pandemic has been just listening and responding to the needs of Coloradans in our work. So since the rescue plan came through, a lot of you guys haven't actually seen some of that funding, or if it's come through, it may be in state programs as well. So I'd be curious to hear if you guys are beyond the state and local distribution. Some of it's still being distributed. And then the next big bucket that everybody's kind of waiting to hear about is the infrastructure bill that passed right before Thanksgiving. This is not COVID related funding. This is not contingent to COVID impacts, but this is going to be a large body of programmatic funding that's going to come out of federal agencies and go to the state that are going to be mostly coming through federal grants. And so our office is available to help you navigate that and also to write support letters, coordinate your project development, support you there. We are a part of that team. Consider us part of that team. So again, I've kind of used up a bunch of time there. I'll let Antonio and I work closely together. Travis and I work together. All of us staff, we keep in touch with each other. So thank you very much. I'm going to send some business cards around.
Thank you, Ms. Minks. One of the things, just for your information, that we are struggling with, just keep it in mind, is I understand that there are some of the rules have not been finalized on some of this money. So we need to get that in order to be able to disperse this money properly. At this time, Mr. Antonio Huerta is next. He's from Senator Hickenlooper's office.
Thank you, Mayor Rico. Thank you all for having me as well. It's been quite an interesting year. It's been a year since insurrection, January 6th. We have been getting emails all day from the Capitol just warning us, letting us know what might happen, what are we looking at. Make sure you stay safe. Our offices are closed for a couple weeks due to the pandemic, just to kind of wait out to see what's going on. But I want to just take this time to thank you for everyone who works in the justice system and your teams for all the work that you do. I knew coming to at least Los Angeles County in Southern Colorado that we are safe here, and thank you for all you do. Like I said, it's been a year. This is our first year. We are not the very senior senator. We pretty much had a startup office, and I started last May. So I am still learning, and luckily I have folks like Erin and Travis, who have been here a little longer than me and have kind of oriented me into the region. Almost immediately, we jumped into CDS requests, where I got to work with Mike Valentine on a couple of requests and some funding for the municipal airport and airports across southern Colorado, coming down from former rescue plan bills, but also infrastructure. And to jump into infrastructure just a little bit, so Senator Hickenlooper was one of 22 senators, bipartisan committee that actually created the infrastructure bill. And he was one of 2 freshman senators that actually got to sit on this committee. And then what I learned is that bills typically, on average, don't get passed into law. On average would be about 7 years. It took us the first 10 months. The Recharge Act was Hickenlooper's first bill to become law, and that helps fight climate change by making it cheaper to drive electric vehicles. And that was one of 4. The other was the marijuana research, which created just some guidelines supporting the marijuana research in impaired driving, the RTD loan deposit, and universal broadband. I know there's a digital divide, we know that there's an urban-rural divide, and we're working with local officials to actually try and help bridge that. So in terms of universal broadband, there's going to be about $65 billion in investment to help close this divide. And we're actually, Senator Hickenlooper's office just met with the broadband office, the Colorado Broadband Office, right before Christmas to actually talk about what is next. And they're having listening sessions. I think they had one this week. They're having another one next week to really look at needs. So if you want some more information on this listening session, we can send you some of that information. And I have a lot of other numbers on just kind of what's going to be coming down from infrastructure, but I just kind of like to end with talking a little bit about the committees that Senator Hickenlooper is on. First is, so the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, the ENR committee, so this is the counterpart to forestry and how we will support in water and water infrastructure with CLEAVE and everything that's kind of going on in southern Colorado. The Health Committee, so which is Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. The Committee on Commerce, Science and Transportation, and then Small Business Committee. And just kind of like a little fun note, he became the first freshman Democrat in 42 years to chair 2 subcommittees. The first is the Science and Space Subcommittee in the Commerce Committee, and the second is in the Health Committee on Employment and Workplace Safety. So if you have any issues or concerns in those regards, Senator Hickenlooper's office can help you with that, and we partner with Senator Bennett on that. So thank you, Mayor Rico, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Huerta, and this time I'd like to bring forward Mr. Travis Grant from Congressman Buck's office.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everybody who is here today. These kind of meetings are critical to make sure that across the board, from the city, the county, the state, and the federal level, that we all are aware of what we're doing and can coordinate our efforts and make sure that we're doing the best work we can on behalf of southeastern Colorado. I'm going to keep it short because my colleagues, Erin and Antonio, have done a really good job of laying out some of the legislation that's passed. I will add that with infrastructure legislation, if there's any projects or anything that you'd like our support on, feel free to reach out to me. I will send my cards around, as Erin did. Along with that, if you ever want members of our staff or the congressman at an event or present for something, please feel free to reach out to me. Really, if you have any needs or concerns, I pretty much always answer my phone day or night. So I'll send my cards around at the end, and I ask you to reach out to me with anything. No issue is ever too small. 2021 was a really busy year for our office. Within the district, we did 1,000 meetings, spread over 7 staffers, and we solved 1,350 cases for our constituent services. So we intend to up those numbers this year. 2022 will be a continuation of the year of last year of the work we were doing in the district and in DC. From a ledge portfolio, the congressman has a few issues that he's been pushing since he's been in Congress. And those continue. Those are the Water Act, which would allow our state and other states to upgrade water infrastructure and be able to offset those costs on tax breaks. And the Apex Act, which would ensure that we have a free marketplace for aluminum within the United States. That's a big concern of our brewers here in the state of Colorado. In terms of regionally, the biggest piece of legislation we worked on last year was the Amatchi Act. We passed it through the House with the work of ourselves and Congressman Neguse, bipartisan effort there, and now it's over in the Senate. We are hopeful that it will pass through the Senate this year and be signed into law, which will allow us to designate the Amatchi site as a part of the National Park Service. So we look forward to having that pass through the Senate and get signed into law. It's a really great example of the bipartisan work that does happen in DC. I think too often we find out that it's all very partisan, and the truth is a lot of the work we do, both in the district at the staff level and at the federal level, is as bipartisan as ever. The big priority of the congressman, it's been a priority since over the 116th and now the 117th Congress, is his antitrust legislation. So the congressman has been very interested and working bipartisanly to address antitrust in the tech sphere, ensuring that companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, and Amazon are playing by fair rules, not monopolizing the marketplace. And that's not just for them, but to ensure that as we move into a tech-oriented world and continue to develop our tech, that every new company plays by the rules, but also is protected so that we can continue to foster innovation. So that's what I have. Like I said, I'll send around my cards. If you ever need anything, whether it's help with the IRS or any other federal agency, would like us present at a meeting or would like our support through grants or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. You did say the IRS, right?
I did, yes.
At this time, we're going to transition over now to the opioid settlement, and we're very fortunate today to have with us from the Attorney General's office. She is going to present remotely, Ms. Heidi Williams. So, Heidi, if you're available, please give us your presentation.
Wonderful, thank you all. I'm happy to be here. I wish I was there in person. It just didn't work out for me to come today, but next time. Wanted to just go over a few things related to the opioid settlement, and I'm wondering if we can get my slides up on the screen. Yay! Thanks, Audra. All right, you can go to the next slide. So I wanted to update you on a couple of things. You probably saw an article in the paper last week talking about the Purdue settlement and some issues with that. It does affect us in a way because we probably will see $50 or $60 million from the Purdue bankruptcy, but we probably won't see that money for a couple of years now, just because there's more things going on in the courts. And I guess the good news is that we're still going to see over $400 million to the state of Colorado. As you can see, the 3 large drug distributors in Johnson & Johnson will be sending $385 million over the next 8 years for Johnson & Johnson and the next 18 years for drug distributors. Another $25 million will be coming from the Mallinckrodt bankruptcy, and then we already have almost $10 million from the McKinsey settlement, waiting to send that out. Also, just wanted to thank you all for those of you who participated and signed onto the MOU. So every county in the state has signed onto the MOU and released future claims against Johnson & Johnson drug distributors. This allows Colorado to fully maximize the settlement funds. So we have almost all the towns and cities, but we're still missing some. So if any county commissioners there want to get with me, I can tell you if we're missing any of yours. So we can go to the next slide. I know we're short on time. There's a lot of things you can use the settlement funds for. I'm not going to go over every single thing on these slides, but I know that they will be sending these slides out to you to give you some ideas. So prevention education is a really important piece of how we use these funds to really prevent future generations from getting addicted to opioids. One of the really big, scary things I'm sure you all have heard is that now fentanyl has entered into our illicit drug market, and a lot of people are losing their lives. We do have a video, and I put it in the last slide here, that you all can push out on your social media. It's just a warning from the Attorney General about fentanyl and how one pill could kill. So we've partnered with the DEA to really get that message out. We'll go on to the next slide. Again, more prevention education work. The other thing that I would say that you can use the funds for is purchasing naloxone, which is the antagonist to opioids. So it will reverse an opioid or fentanyl poisoning. You can also purchase fentanyl strips. That's something that someone can use to test for fentanyl. It's a little bit controversial, so we're not saying you should or shouldn't. We're just saying that is an allowable use. And we also really want to talk about, educating our providers so that they can provide medication-assisted treatment. We're finding that that is really the best way for people to stay in recovery. Go to the next slide, please. Obviously, these funds can be used for treatment. Go to the next slide. Here's just more ideas. And then the next slide, I think we'll talk about recovery services. Hub and spoke models are very, they're becoming very popular because they really provide those wraparound services to treat the person, the whole person, not just for the drug addiction, but for everything that kind of went along with that, whether there's trauma or chronic pain, those kinds of things. So I put some ideas in here for you on that. Why don't you go to the next slide? We have a couple of rock stars in Colorado that certainly if any of you are interested in talking to folks, we have the Coast Law model. This is a partnership between Larimer and Wells County. They really just took everybody that was engaged and involved in mental health and substance use disorder and sat down at the table. This was law enforcement, providers, human services, just anybody you can think of. And they did a hub and spoke model. So I've put the information and a link here to that, and also to show the grant that they received from SAMHSA, which is a federal organization, to provide funding for those peer navigators, which helps people just get to their services and make sure they don't fall through the cracks. And then there's also a PowerPoint presentation link here that you're welcome to go to, and I've put the contact information, everything in there if you want to talk to somebody there. And then next slide, please. There's a lot of things we can do in the criminal justice and law enforcement. Obviously, we'll always keep working on interdiction and getting these drugs off the street. But Longmont is doing something really cool, and they have several different programs here. They have addiction and mental health resources. They have an intensive case management service. They have crisis outreach and response. They have law enforcement assisted diversion and an angel initiative. The angel initiative is something that's kind of up and coming. It's an opportunity for people to come in and self-report and get help to navigate themselves through whatever it is that they need, including if they have any criminal justice situations. So those are all links to their website. And then next slide, please. Recovery services, I won't go into those, but recovery housing, really recovery is obviously the longest part of a person's journey, and they really need to stay in recovery the rest of their life. And we have very few recovery services in Colorado, so that is something that we're encouraging folks to take a look at. Next slide, please. There might be a couple of these, you can keep going. I'm trying to whip through these so you guys can get back to your meeting. Again, I talked about the naloxone and Narcan. CRAFT is a great program for families that are dealing with a family member who might be in active drug use or trying to get into recovery. So those are just some ideas. Next slide, please. Mobile units is a great idea. I think you guys already have some mobile units in your area that provide medication-assisted treatment. If you don't feel like you do in your community, let me know and I'll see if I can get you all connected. Next slide. And then I already talked about the criminal justice and law enforcement and gave you some ideas from Longmont. So we can move to the next slide. There's some other things you can use those funds for as you're working on your plan. Those are all listed here, training, research programs, some administrative costs. Obviously, you're going to be part of that. You can use up to 10% of those for administrative expenses. And we did give a grant to your region for $20,000 if you all hired a facilitator to help you guys get your regional committee together. Next slide. See, that's it. So here's a couple of links. There's our opioid response plan, gives you a whole list of ideas on what you can spend the money on. And then I just put a couple of videos in here that the Attorney General did just for you guys when you get the slides. And I think that's it. And happy to take any questions if anyone has any, or move on to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Heidi, for your information. You know what you might do is maybe send some of that information to us, send it to Audra, and then we can disperse it out to anybody who wants that information.
Yeah,
as the day goes,
slides.
we've got to recognize that we've got to be a little bit flexible. I'm going to have Mr. Lopez come in next, but we had a request here just a little while ago from Tara Marshall. She's from the Department of Local Affairs, and she was supposed to come on early or later on, but she was called back to the Marshall Fire endeavor because they had pulled in many of the DOLA representatives to help. So she's asked if she can go on next, so I'm going to bring her up, and then we'll bring Felix up. And after that, we'll bring Mr. Simpleman. And then after that, we will bring in Dr. Epper to do a presentation. So at this point in time, if Tara is ready, Tara, would you please give us your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to give Audra a second to pull up that PowerPoint. I want to thank the City of Trinidad and Los Animas County for including DOLA in this legislative roundtable, and I really appreciate the Mayor allowing us to go a little bit early. We are running in conjunction with Boulder County and Disaster Assistance Center up here, and have seen about 1,300 people since we opened on Sunday. So I'd like to go over some of the funding that's been available since the COVID-19 began. The first 2020 was the CARES Act funding. The program that DOLA administered was the Coronavirus Relief Fund program. Governor Polis set aside $275 million in CARES Act funding that was given to the state. Of that funding, Los Animas County received $726,000, City of Trinidad $510,000, and the town of Cokeville $7,000. They received that in July of 2020. Those eligible expenses that they were able to use those for included expenses that occurred between March of 2020 and December 2021 for any unbudgeted items in relation to the response or recovery from the COVID-19 public health emergency. I want to call out the fact that both the county and the city used quite a few of those funds to reinvest them in small businesses within the city and county. And that was an amazing thing to do with those funds for the local government and for the local community. Audra, next slide, please. So this last session in the 2021 legislative session, the governor and the legislature, in particular the assembly, saw it was important to put aside some state funds into state stimulus programs. I want to talk just about a couple of those and how those have been invested in the region here in Southern Colorado. Senate Bill 252 created two new funding programs. One is the Main Street Open for Business. The City of Trinidad received $250,000 for updates to the lobby and storefronts at the Fox West Theater. That funding is under contract now, and we will begin to see that work this year. The Community Revitalization Grant was really exciting. It's a partnership between the Division of Local Government and DOLA and between Colorado Creative Industries located inside of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. I really want to give a call out that Trinidad, the community, received more funding than even Denver in this program. Want to give a shout out to the city, to the mayor and Mike Valentine, and to Dana Crawford, who really pursued this funding for the local community. 1.55 million was, granted to Space to Create Trinidad. That is under contract right now, and those funds are being invested in the community. 3.45 into the Fox West Theater, which is owned by the city and being developed locally. And a shout out to that nonprofit board, the Fox West Theater Alliance, who is doing great work to see that that historic building come back. And then $4 million to develop the Eastern School. So these were exciting projects. This program did not require that the money be granted directly to local governments. It could be directed to developers directly. Next slide, please. Additional state funding programs was House Bill 1271, which created 2 programs designed to promote and support innovative housing solutions. So IHOP, the Planning Grant Program, it's a program which allows funding to be given to local governments to address the development of land use policies that support affordable housing. So what we're seeing, particularly in a lot of rural jurisdictions, is old land use codes that don't directly support or help the development of affordable housing. Trinidad has applied for this funding. It's under review now and anticipating a positive response to that, but we'll know in the next few weeks. IHOY, I guess that's how we're gonna call our next program, which doesn't open until July 2022. This is really exciting because it's going to allow the local government to receive funding for infrastructure that supports affordable housing projects. So often, for those of you out there who are interested in developing housing projects, the local government tries to support the developer in utility extensions, in parks and playground, and in tap fees that are part of an affordable housing project. These are the types of eligible expenses that you will be able to apply for beginning in July. Next slide, please. American Rescue Plan. This was the next large federal funding program that came. It was signed into law on March 11th. It allocated $5.76 billion to Colorado, both to the state and local governments in 2 payments. Half was received in 2021 and half in 2022. Colorado received $3.8 billion. I've listed those there on what was received. Los Angeles County, $2.8 million. City of Trinidad, $2 million. Aguilar, $120,000. Hopedale, $30,000. Branson, $18,000. Kim, $17,000. And Starkville at $13,000. So every single county and municipality in Colorado will receive funding from the American Rescue Plan. Next slide, please. So these are the important dates related to that program. Any expenses that were occurred after March 3rd, 2021 are reimbursable all the way up through these dates. All of the funding must be obligated to your project or your program by December 31st, 2024, and all costs must be expended by December 2026. So for those of you that are working directly in local government, this program differs than the Coronavirus Relief Fund, where you had to spend the money really fast and it had really strict guidelines. This is supposed to allow you a little bit more time so you can develop projects. Next slide, please. Eligible uses. So I want to just touch on these 4 eligible uses, but I do want to say that the U.S. Treasury has not released the final rule. These are the guidelines that we're seeing in the interim final rule. So without the final rule yet issued, please keep in mind, this is the guidance that's available now, but the U.S. Treasury could make changes in the final rule. The funding can be used to respond to public health emergencies or any negative economic impacts. The second is that premium pay may be offered to such workers within local government or within eligible employers who are considered essential. So that essential work would be law enforcement. It would be healthcare providers. It would be those working in local governments that have direct contact with the public and are at risk of health issues as a result of the pandemic. The third one was any government can, to the extent that they lost revenue, they can replace that revenue with this funding. And then finally, and this is where we're seeing many projects being developed in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Next slide, please. And thank you for allowing DOLA to be part of your legislative roundtable. I'd be happy to answer questions, or I can also just circle back with Mike Valentine and Phil Dorenkamp and see if there are any specific questions from the county or the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall, and just to repeat, I mentioned to Erin earlier, it's going to be super important that we get these rules in place so that we know exactly.
They were just published right now.
Oh, they were?
They were finalized in the middle of the presentation.
Wow, they're very interesting.
So we both just got the email on the other side.
Good to hear.
I don't know if they're what you guys want, but we'll
Okay.
see.
Anyway, now, Mr. Commissioner Lopez, would you please come forward?
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Also from NACO, Erin, I just got a message that the rules were going to be probably published by the end of the week.
They're just, we got the press release, so we'll get it breaking out.
So one of the things that we have from San Luis County, I want to thank you all for being here today. Some of the things that unite us at the county level, as your Colorado Counties Incorporated president and your National Association of Counties board member and a voting member for the National Association, I want to say that there was a lot of work that we're doing together with other states and with other counties when it comes to three things in Colorado. We're standing, of course, together, no more unfunded mandates by the legislature, by any bills, and so Senator Simpson and Holtorf, they know our basically unification on this. Then, of course, we got behind 100% as well on ag, defending agriculture. On 2021, that was an imperative and important step that we took together to actually stand against some initiatives that we're going to be putting forth, impacting ag throughout the entire state of Colorado. The last point that we have here in Colorado is local control. Throughout this pandemic, one of the things that we have asked the state of Colorado, CDPHE, and all the agencies to include our legislative and representatives is to involve us when there comes to a decision to be made for our own counties. And therefore, I'm going to ask if you can put up the PowerPoint presentation that I have on the opioid. Thank you. Because of local control, the state of Colorado settled an agreement a while back with the tobacco industry. We don't know what happened to those dollars. A lot of the dollars are still someplace lost in the legislature. One of the things that I want to give a huge shout out to Attorney General Phil Weiser. From the beginning, I was humbly appointed by my fellow commissioners and by CCI to serve on the opioid task force roundtable discussions that we had for a long time. And one of the things that came out of the whole thing is we didn't want to give the legislature an opportunity to actually collect the dollars and put them back in places where perhaps we didn't agree on. We created a very, very robust group of commissioners, and also the Colorado Municipal League came together, and we decided that by giving the opportunity for counties to manage these dollars probably would be the best thing to do. Attorney General Weiser agreed with all of us. So 60% of the $400 million that are on the table are going to be coming to counties. The counties were basically broken up into 19 different regions, and Las Animas County is part of the Region 19. And you can see Pueblo County, who is the largest county. We had a very great conversation with the commissioners out of Pueblo County. They're going to serve as the fiscal agent for the region. In that, we have Huérfano, Las Animas, Crowley, Otero, Bend, Kiowa, Prowers, and Baca counties. So that is Region 19. And one of the things, I am the vice chair of that particular group. And if you have any questions and or information that you want to send through, please don't hesitate to contact us. From the onset, like we said, the program requested funds to be controlled and spent locally rather than the state being in custody. Because at this particular level, we know exactly the services that we need, and we know what our community really is in need of in order for us to impact the individuals that are going through this pandemic. Let me share with you a couple of numbers that are just so impactful. The epidemic or pandemic, whatever you want to call it, for this opioid, it is not simply here in Los Animas County, the state of Colorado. I was at a National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C., and we had a roundtable as well on that, and it is everywhere. The United States lost about 100,000 individuals to opioids in 2021. That's a lot of people. Here in Colorado, I'm going to be sending out later on also, there is an opportunity to actually look at what we're going to be doing in Region 19. But in Colorado, we saw an increase. We lost about 1,800 individuals in 2021, which was a huge increase from 2020 of about 1,420 people. Los Animas County, and later on I'm going to share with you, as I said, there is a website through CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, that outlines, you can go in there and it's live, it's actually work in progress. It'll calculate how many people have died in Los Animas County, which in the last 20 years, we've lost about 80 individuals to opioids, and or whether it's voluntary or involuntary use of opioids. There are tremendous challenges that we have in front of us. So one of the things that we talked about on Region 19 is we're going to be working on prevention. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, what we're trying to do here, but I can tell you of the 9 counties that are working together, we're all facing the same challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we have in Region 19, and the reason why we invited Pueblo to be part of the region, is because facilities. 10% of the $400 million are going to be going to build infrastructure, which is not enough. For Los Animas County to say that we're going to build infrastructure with 10% of the $400 million, and by the way, these funds are going to be distributed over 18 years. And as of recent, because there are some states that are having a pushback on this, we discovered that there's not going to be any funds in 2022. So Region 19 is going to continue to get together and do the planification and exactly outline the areas that we need to be addressing. From Browers to Kiowa to Baca to Huerfano to Los Animas County, we're all facing basically the same thing. And one of the things that we discovered recently, I had an opportunity to read a study that my daughter and her medical students wrote at Duke University. Basically, they said that lack of 3 elements really pushes individuals to opioid usage. Family structure. It is a powerful thing. And I want to tell you here, collaboration and partnership of what we have, whether it's, we've heard increments of $400 million all over the place this morning. So it's not about money. But this is going to have to be the education that we're going to be doing through the prevention perspective, is going to be sending the information to the families and impacting everyone in the cycle, in the circle of those individuals that are being impacted. And I would agree, Erin, absolutely. The idea that we have from the perspective of NACO to Colorado Counties Incorporated is education. It is so powerful. And then, of course, one of the big partners that we are going to be inviting is going to be higher ed and all the school districts. Because quite frankly, this is happening too early and too late. But families are not being included as we go through this particular process. Can you go to the next slide, please? So on the criminal justice perspective, about a month ago or so, Sheriff Navarrete had a presenter on jail behavioral-based health services. Our prison systems and the jail system, we have an opportunity right in front of us that we need to capitalize on. And again, who is delivering that information And at the end of this, one of the conversations I had early on with the governor was that to be attentive to what happens post COVID-19. We're going to have so many of these behavioral issues coming up, and the behavior and the erratic attempts to address it all is not going to be money alone. The partnership and collaboration of agencies, we have our Health and Human Services. I'm on a committee that is working on child welfare allocation for all the children's challenges that we have throughout the state of Colorado. And I can tell you that on that particular group, we're working with over $500 million. And that's still not enough to address some of the issues that we're seeing as counties, as states. So money is very, very huge key of the equation, but community corrections, jail-based addiction treatment, post interactions, and social programs. In order for us to maintain the recidivism at an acceptable rate, later on, Colonel Simpleman is going to be talking about this House Bill 1215 that was introduced in 2021. That too is going to be providing a ton of money specifically for two cities, and that particular bill was, they were mentioned at Grand Junction and Trinidad because of the per capita and the rate of impact that we have for our communities. Please go to the next slide. So one of the things that we're also looking at, what are some of the treatment and recovery sites that we need to have? Again, with 10% of the infrastructure that we're going to be getting in these funds, the thing is that we don't have facilities in Trinidad. We don't have facilities within the region to provide all the services that we need. And I can tell you that as a representative for Region 19, one of the things that we are assessing is opportunities to provide those services without duplication. Can we transport patient A to county B? And can we do vice versa, provide the services because the dollars are not going to be enough. We have a community group that has been working for many years. I've been part of it for probably since 2017, Drug-Free Communities. That is actually through our judicial district that is working to address some of these issues. And that particular group will continue to gather information and send recommendations to the opioid working group. The idea that we have here is, will we be able to ameliorate the circumstances and mitigate the results? Please go to the next slide. So some of the services that we have for Region 19 have been identified throughout by county, and again, not enough. My daughter shared with me this study that she and her students, fellow students at Duke Medical School, actually put together. And what they said is, in their county, they're saying our county suffers about 40% increase on opioid deaths, and that's in North Carolina. We can say the same thing here in Los Animas County. We can say the same thing here in Colorado. So by comparing data from one side of the United States to the other side of the United States, we know that we have a pandemic and an epidemic that is going on besides COVID-19. So we need to pay attention and address that. Let me close with this. The opportunity for us to work together is here. And I think this is one of the most underground challenges that we're facing as a community, as a society, as counties, as cities, and many times we look the other way. I had an opportunity to run a primary care clinic a few years ago, and I can tell you, I used to get phone calls. I was the manager of the clinic, but I used to get phone calls from patients. Can you please tell the doctor just to prescribe my meds? That's all I want. It all began innocently. I want to share with you, if I can, Audra or whomever is driving this, there is a video that I want to close with. I want to play just about maybe 10 seconds of that. It's on, I believe is the very last one, yes. If you can open that, I want to close with this because it's so imperative and important. It begins by, I didn't mean to do this, and I don't think my doctor meant to do this to me either. But one of the most important things that we're also having on Region 19 is we are providing the education that we're going to be transferring on to our medical providers is to actually have a medical assessment, a drug assessment checklist. Okay, Felix, what drugs are you taking in addition to? What else are you being prescribed in addition to? And honestly, it's where it's going to be. Let's go ahead and play about a minute of this, Audra, and I want to thank you all. And if you have any questions on this, once again, please, your county commissioners pretty involved in this particular project. Thank you. If that's okay, you can send it over to all the participants later on. They can watch that. Okay.
Commissioner Lopez is exactly right. A couple of years, about maybe the first or second year that I was mayor, a gentleman came up to me and he said, I went to the doctor, broke my arm or whatever he broke. They put me on pain medication. After 6 weeks or so, they said, go home. By that time, I was addicted to the pain medication. What am I supposed to do now? So that's exactly what we're talking about here. And I think that's a major issue. At this point, I want to go ahead and bring on Colonel Simpleman, who's going to talk about House Bill 1215. That House bill was actually introduced by Representative Holtorf this last year, so we need to thank him for bringing this forward to help Trinidad out and also Grand Junction. I know, like I said, we're running quite behind, but like I said, there's still a lot of eats and drinks in the back there, so please take the time if you wish to move forward. So, Colonel, go ahead and you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me now? Was I on mute? I want to thank Representative Holder and Senator Simpson for your support of the HB 21-1215. It came about, they proposed extension of a bill that had passed in 2017, in which the program was tried in North Aurora and Southern Colorado Springs. The idea, for those that don't know, it's put $1 up front to keep people out of jail, out of prisons, and perhaps save the bill and not have to spend $100,000 later, kind of like a health program. Spend $1 to stay out there, you don't have to spend $100,000 to get out there. We received a grant from DOLA. We're in the process of ramping up for the program, and it's good to follow all of these previous discussions, because as we started out to do this, the first thing I did was go talk to Dr. Epper at the college, talk to Judge Gerlach, talk to Commissioner Lopez, the Chief of Police Cardoso, and Sheriff Navarrete, because these people are involved in the challenge of reducing recidivism and keeping people out of prison and making them productive citizens. Where we are now is we get a grant the Trinidad Community Foundation gets us a grant for about $340,000. We will partner with the Latino Coalition, who will be doing a lot of our data collection and help us do an assessment of how well we're doing. And then the entire effort is going to be a collaboration with various organizations and within the community. The first step is to create the planning team that will identify the geographical area and the criteria that are those things that we want to attack and make better to reduce crime in Los Angeles County. I'm assuming that we will, the way the bill reads, it says Trinidad and surrounding incorporated area, so I'm assuming the area is going to be Los Angeles County. I think this is a case where I've been saying for a few years, great things are happening in Trinidad. And it's because some time back, people realized that if government at all levels, businesses and nonprofits work together, incredible things can happen. And I think Trinidad is evidence that this is a factor. Mayor Rico, I know, worked very hard at getting this down as well. So I see our support, the outcome, and I can't predict the outcome, obviously, of the planning committee, because they will establish criteria. But I see three very major areas that we have to address. One is education. We've heard that Judge Gerlach mentioned that, among others, Commissioner Lopez, etc. So education is probably number one. Get these clients, these people involved in the justice system, educated, giving them the tools to become productive citizens. Number two is work at changing behavior. If you're doing bad things, you got to stop doing bad things, start doing good things. So we have our fair share. We do have a good, strong support system within Trinidad of nonprofits that provide direct services. And then the final thing that I've learned in talking to people that are involved, ex-convicts, etc., is probably the most critical factor is the environment. We're very lucky on the education side. Trinidad State College has a tremendous program which they're working within the prison system now to educate convicts. And we can just move that over and educate and give these people the tools. The college actually, there were two prisoners that were eligible for parole that refused parole so that they could complete the college program. That says something for their endeavor. The behavioral, we do have, as I said, direct services, nonprofits, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's alcoholic or addiction anonymous or addicted. We're obviously going to work very closely with Commissioner Lopez and the opiate, because that is a major crisis that we face.
Well, it looks like we may have lost Colonel Simpleman. With that?
We lost the phone connection. Starting up
So we can start the programs. Our challenge are, of course, measures of effectiveness. We look at outcomes, not outputs. We want to know how do you measure how well you're doing. That's one of the things we'll get help from the Latino Coalition. So, and by the way, we're in the final stages of forming the planning team. We invite anybody from the community to be part of it. We've reached out. We have a number of people and organizations involved right now, that we welcome everybody to be part of it because it is a community effort. We're with the Trinidad Community Foundation, so any questions you can get a hold of me. Rosemary Shire, she's on there, or our president, Lisa Amarillo. So thank you for the time and appreciate it.
Hey Lou, this
Yes, sir.
this is Representative Holtorf. So
Yes, sir.
I was the prime sponsor on this bill coming to Los Alamos County and Trinidad.
Yes, sir.
This was heavy lift, but got a lot of bipartisan support. And for the community down there, the success has been measured in Aurora and East Denver. The success has been measured in Colorado Springs in 2 pilot programs. And I told the General Assembly, I said, this needs to get out to the rest of the state. Let's go big or go home. I wanted it to go all across the state, but that wasn't feasible. So what we did is a targeted Grand Junction in Trinidad. And I will tell you, if the community comes together, if you guys work with all the stakeholders in your community, you will get these individuals reintegrated into society as productive members of society, working and supporting our communities through labor and through economic activity, instead of seeking crime as a default and returning back to the prison system. So I really want Los Alamos County and Trinidad to show the folks at the Gold Dome that this works. And it works in southern Colorado, it can work in eastern Colorado, it can work in southwestern Colorado, it can work everywhere. So you got a lot to prove, and I've done about all I can to launch this thing and get you going. I just want to make sure that funding is there, so you folks keep talking to me and Senator Simpson about the funding requirements that push and make this thing continue to have a successful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holder.
We recognize that you were the main push behind this, and we view that we have we have an obligation to the client. That's the person we're going to help. We have an obligation to taxpayers. It's taxpayer money, so that money has to be spent appropriately and wisely. And finally, we as a model program, if you will, one of our intentions is we will collect lessons learned, share those lessons learned, and we're relying heavily, by the way, on the Aurora and Color Exclusion Service. So. And the Latino Coalition's been great, by the way, you should know that, and we appreciate all you did. So.
Thank you, Colonel, for the information. And just to let everyone know, this is pretty much a pilot program for 2 years, which will bring in Los Alamos County $750,000. One of the things that I was about to mention, you still going?
Okay.
Are you still presenting?
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that I've talked to Colonel Simpleman about, and also to Commissioner Lopez, and to bring in also the Partners for a Drug-Free Community that I think Mr. Lopez was talking about. I think this could be a partnership that will envelope everything together that needs to be done concerning opioids and crime prevention and other things. So I think it's very important that maybe all 3 groups come together and work together. Okay, at this point, we'll bring up President Dr. Epper for her presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Rico, and good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be with you today and to welcome you to our campus here at Trinidad State College. I know some of you were here a few months ago for the Action 22 conference, which we hosted down at the Masari Theater, and we're just delighted to welcome you back to campus here. We are also looking forward to welcoming our students back to campus on January 18th. We are planning to have a full on-campus experience for students this year, and that includes in-person classes, open residence halls, athletic programs, as well as student clubs and activities. But I will tell you that we are preparing for an uptick in COVID cases compared to what we experienced last fall. We haven't talked a whole lot about COVID during this presentation or this event today, but I will tell you that it's very much on our minds at the college because it threatens our ability to deliver education to our students in the way we know that they need it. And so just based on the new variant that is circulating so widely throughout our state and in our community, we know and we expect that we're going to have more cases, and we are prepared for that. But we are also hoping that it's going to be manageable, just as we have been managing here at the college for the better part of the last 2 years. And I do want to take a moment just to thank all of our state and local elected officials. Here on the Trinidad side, our county commissioners, Los Animas County, Trinidad City Council, Mayor Rico, our state representatives, Senator Cleve Simpson, Representative Valdez, and Representative Holtorp. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention our elected officials in Alamosa County Commissioners and City Council, and the Health Department in Alamosa County has been really supportive in just helping to ensure that we could continue to operate and fulfill our mission as a college. There's a handout on your table that has our major initiatives, and I just want to highlight a couple of them, and I hope you'll look through them as you have time. But a couple of things that we're excited about. Number one, we're celebrating the graduation of our first class of BSN students. That's Bachelor of Science in Nursing. They just graduated in December, and it was really wonderful to attend their pinning ceremony, which was held in Alamosa just a few weeks ago. And not surprisingly, all of those students already have jobs, and we're just especially proud of their success. We're also excited to be expanding our construction trades program, and this is a program that is funded by the State Attorney General's office at $1.66 million to support our building trades program here on the Trinidad campus, while also addressing blighted housing in our community. And so far, it's been very successful. The program has trained about 40 students over the last year, and we are in the process of renovating 2 homes over on Stonewall Avenue, and we've just purchased our 3rd home, which will be under renovation soon. And we're hoping during the next year we'll be able to expand this program over to the Valley campus, and that would also be a partnership with the state AG's office. I'm also very proud and pleased that we are the only college in Colorado that is currently authorized by the U.S. Department of Education to offer second chance Pell. And we have been working closely with the Colorado Department of Corrections to deliver courses to about 75 students throughout the state. We're operating in 14 different correctional facilities across the state right now. We are currently on a COVID hold, but we're hoping to be able to resume those classes hopefully by early February. And then finally, I want to let you know that one of our biggest priorities is addressing our own blighted housing problem here on campus. And I don't use that term lightly. Our residence halls are 60 years old, and they are badly in need of renovation. Last summer, we undertook an extensive design and engineering study to determine exactly what would be needed to bring our 4 residence halls up to modern building codes. And that plan is now published on our website, along with our complete 10-year master facilities plan. So I encourage you to go look at it. There's also 2 posters over on the table in the back of the room that talk a little bit about the residence hall plan as well as the master's facilities plan. And I'm very excited, as Senator Simpson mentioned earlier, that Senator Simpson and Representative Holtorf have presented a plan for potential funding to support the residence hall improvements using some of the state's federal stimulus money. And I also want to let you know that the college has prioritized using a big chunk of our own stimulus money that we received from the federal government. We received through the CARES Act, CARISA, and now the American Rescue Plan, a total of about $4 million that can be used by the institution. That doesn't include the monies that we were required to give directly to students. But of the $4 million that we received for the institution, we have allocated $2.1 million toward phase 1 of the residence hall improvements, and that's addressing indoor air quality and other COVID-related safety measures to improve the residence halls. It's important that we have access, this kind of one-time opportunity to use these federal funds, because some of you may not know that residence halls are not eligible for state funding. We are not eligible to request capital funds through the capital development process at the state level the way we recently got capital funding to support our library improvements. Residence halls are not eligible. So really this may be the only way that we can make these improvements in our residence halls, and I'm really hopeful that our representatives will be successful in securing some of this money for those improvements. That's really all I had to share with you. I know we're limited on time, but I just want to say we're excited to have you on campus and hope you enjoy the event, and just thank you for allowing us to be part of it.
Thank you, Dr. Prepper. That money that you're trying to get to help her, is that going to be in the form of a bill?
Eventually, it'll have to be, yes.
Okay, at that point in time, if you need anybody, county commissioners or somebody from city council to go up and do testimony, let us know. At this time, we have 3 speakers left. One is from the Department of Human Services Director, Mr. Michael Aragon, and he's going to do his presentation. Then I'll do my presentation, and then Commissioner Luis Lopez will finalize. So, Mr. Aragon.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I said just this point, good afternoon, everyone. Senator Simpson, Representative Holtorf, congressional staff representatives, thank you all for being here. County commissioners, city council members, and the public in general. Just some quick updates from the Department of Human Services, and I do want to touch slightly on the opioid epidemic that we've heard several comments on. But primarily, a couple of the main pieces that I would like to cover is that in the 2022 annual year, the department has seen over the last 24 months a massive growth in the number of clients that we are serving at the county level. Primarily what we have seen is an influx of out-of-state folks migrating to Trinidad and Los Animas County, which has caused a massive influx in the program funding that we provide through the Department of Human Services, to the tune of about 58.3% in new federal and state grant funding that we've had to pull down in order to meet the needs of the community here. That also, and thanks to our county commissioners and their efforts in the ballot measures and the county, in order to provide us with about a 12% increase in tax revenue, which has helped support those state and federal grants. However, we continue to see a growth pattern of about 3% annually in all of our programs, which is really impactful. To give you a kind of a general picture, 24 months ago when I walked into DHS, we were about 60% of our current operational budget. So it's a pretty large increase in a 24-month period to jump between 40 and 50%. So just to cover a couple of housekeeping items in regards to the opioid piece, one of the things that I wanted to touch on was we've heard several representatives today discuss that really the change or the mindset of beating OUD, which is the opioid use disorder, it really starts at the educational level and primarily in youth. At DHS, we focus primarily in child welfare with assisting clients. I would say 90% of our client base right now has some form of drug dependency, whether that be prescription or illegal. But 90% of our cases come in because we've had children exposed to some form of drug abuse within the home. In rural areas, there's a heightened risk of 35% higher than urban counterparts in exposing children to those drugs, which also is, that comes with domestic violence. It comes with themselves dabbling in misuse or abuse of drugs early on. And because of that 35% increase, in a small community such as Los Angeles County, that's a huge impact within our adolescent and youth. As far as what the department is focused on is remaining as really the frontline staff in battling the OUD epidemic that exists. Right now, however, though, as Commissioner Lopez indicated, he sits on our Child Welfare Allocation Committee. One of the challenges within that committee or within that program is we just experienced a large cut in funding to state and federal grant funds that we received there, which now limits our ability to service the community in a much better capacity when dealing with this. Additionally, in 2021, we saw an increase in day rates for beds within residential treatment centers, or what we call qualified residential treatment placements, or QRTPs. That increased rate now comes to the tune of us at the department when we have to place a child in a QRTP for any kind of drug or alcohol abuse can be about $10,000 a month to keep them there. That is not a funding line that we have within the Department of Human Services. So it makes it extremely difficult to provide additional services to youth and adolescents, not just an intervention with the familial units, but also when they themselves are experiencing drug or alcohol abuse concerns. Some other areas that we have seen as far as a concern, we spoke about location of treatment centers. This is a major issue for the department. When we are working with family units and we have a parent who is in need of any kind of medical treatment regarding that addiction, right now our closest venues for that are about 125 miles away. That also comes with the need for transportation. A lot of our folks that are experiencing this are highly impoverished. Transportation is not an option for them. And so it becomes more and more difficult for us to provide those types of services to those individuals locally. We have seen some of our folks doing home-based treatments. Unfortunately, however, during the pandemic, we also saw that many of those doing the home-based treatments relapsed or failed or even dropped out of programming because there was not enough support on the behavioral health side during that isolation period that we were in. So we saw a high increase again in numbers of children being exposed to the epidemic of opioid and illegal drug use during that time. Other areas, again, we've all touched on, I think, today: lack of housing, cost of placement in youth, lack of qualified mental health professionals to address the substance abuse issue. What the department is really focused on right now is providing our staffing with additional training on how to intervene and prevent children from exposure to these situations. We also are looking at our adult service end because we do work with a lot of adults in the long-term care placement area. who also suffer from opioid use addiction. We work with our medical providers, we work with our regional accountable entities to really try and offset the use of those and find alternative replacements for pain management while we're working with those clients. So intensive case management services is one of the areas that the department is really focused on. Outside of that, it is day-to-day operations for VHS. So, again, the influx of the number of people migrating to Trinidad into Los Animas County has put a major strain on the department. But again, we are holding our own, and I'm grateful for my staff who have done an amazing job through this pandemic to increase services and accessibility for all of the clients that we serve in Los Animas County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aragon. We'll talk about 4 different areas here. And just briefly, one of the big questions from the community are housing. As everybody is talking about, there's a shortage of housing. Talk to realtors, some say yes, some say no. And they're asking the city, what will we do? The only thing that we can actually do is we can support the housing people in a few different ways. One of the things that we are currently actually trying to do right now is we are considering an incentive program for developers. So that's probably the biggest part of housing that the city of Trinidad is able to help in that regard. I'm also going to report on the Fisher Speak Master Plan. Talked to Kristen Dryling yesterday, and she gave me some updates of what's going on there. Also going to talk about the visioning for the river and also the firm rail passenger rail. As far as the Fisher Speak Master Plan, this is what the project started in 2017 and is of course now the 42nd State Park. And the master plan is moving along quite well. THK and CPW have held several public engagements to get public input and also have worked with several work groups to get engagement on that. The master plan is slated to be completed by March of 2022 and will be turned over to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the leadership team to finalize the master plan. Upon finalization, development and implementation will begin, according to her, very quickly. There will also be a 1-year continued survey and inventory of wildlife and historical work. There is some cultural stuff that's going on up there that they need to develop. You can also keep update on progress by going to the public website, which is www.fisherspeakstatepark.com. And I think the newspaper is posting that pretty much almost every day. So if anybody wants to kind of keep updated, you can go there. They're also looking on construction of the 20 miles of trails, which is expected to be put out to work next week, weather permitting. This includes the trail to the peak. Now the trail to the peak will take approximately 2 years, according to what she's saying. But all of this will tie into the current trail system that's there right now. They've also hired a full-time park ranger, is Charlie Olson, and Tom Shaka is the park resource tech in charge of maintenance. And of course, Chris Dryling remains the park manager overall, both Trinidad State Park and Fisher Speak State Park. On to our river visioning. The Greenway Foundation is in process now of wrapping up what the city has contracted with them to do, but they probably will stay involved with the project. We're also in process of applying for the visioning grant due to GOCO by February the 12th. And if we are successful with that, we will be able to apply for the much larger Centennial grant from GOCO that will bring in a much larger several millions of dollars possibly. GOCO has been very good at helping us and understanding what we need to be successful. They've also recommended that we need to involve all the local stakeholders, get more public engagement, and of course that is really recommended. And by following their suggestions, it will put us in a good position to be successful. This particular item, the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail, is something that I know that a lot of people have had interest in. The current Southwest Chief and Passenger Rail Commission is putting together all the information necessary to pass to the new Front Rail Passenger Rail District. This information will be valuable to the new District Commission. The current commission recently received a raised grant that will finish the updating the rail system from Kansas through Colorado to Lima, New Mexico. We have been very successful in getting millions of dollars in grants to do this work for the past several years. We've also been working on a three-car study that will go from La Junta to Pueblo, working its way north to Denver, Fort Collins, and probably eventually to Cheyenne, Wyoming. When the new commission takes over, the current commission will no longer meet. The new commission was established this last 2021 under Senate Bill 21-238 and will have its first meeting in April of this year. It will be comprised of 17 voting members and some non-voting members. Some are governor appointed and others will be appointed by Council of Governments along the Front Range. The South Central Council of Governments is the local agency which will have a vote. I have been on the current commission for the past 4 years and I hope that I'll be able to continue in that capacity, representing this area. Amtrak passenger rail will continue to come to Trinidad, but if I'm reappointed, I will continue to press the passenger rail district to come straight from Pueblo to Walsenburg and then to Trinidad. This is something that I know I've had a lot of questions on is, what about Trinidad? And I've been pressing this with the current commission, and I do have several of the current commission members that agree with me in that regard. Now this new district and time frame, it's going to be it's a major project costing billions of dollars and will take many years to complete. It's pretty impossible to actually talk about everything that goes along with this new rail district and what's coming. So I'm available to talk to anyone that's interested in wishing to know more about how the development of the Front Rail system works and what is coming forward. At this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Luis Lopez, who will talk about give you county information.
Victor, you saved the best for last on the itinerary. Thank you. Los Angeles County. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Epper, for helping this. Thank you for all of our legislators for being here and our offices for coming today. I do want to brag about being the best. I have the best teammates possible as a county commissioner. We've accomplished 5 ballot measures in 5 years. Not just the ones that Mr. Solano talked about. We've accomplished 5 ballot measures for this community, and we're better for it. And my 2 fellow commissioners, Commissioner Felix Lopez, Commissioner Tony House, are true teammates. And I can't forget Mr. Phil Dorenkamp. This man's amazing for what he's done for your community, folks, what he's done for Los Angeles County, and what we've done collectively working together. I apologize for my speech paralysis today. I've had some Bell palsy issues. So speaking in true Team Los Angeles County, I would ask my fellow Commissioner Tony Hass to come and give the remainder of our county updates today.
Thank you, Luis. And I want to say what an honor it has been to serve with Team Los Angeles County, with our fellow commissioners Lopez and House and Dornkamp. We've accomplished a lot in the last 4 years. Thanks to the esteemed panel and for making the journey here to Los Angeles County. And thank you, Dr. Everett, for providing this venue yet again. Our county projects, we've been very, very busy, and I'm just going to name a few of them that are up to date. Our Fisher Peak Economic Recreational Impact Study was funded by 4 partners, and Los Angeles County was the pass-through, and we came up with $50,000. Trinidad came up with 50,000. The Trust for Public Lands came up with 25,000. And the Nature Conservancy came up with 25,000, which was matched by DOLA. And the RFQ was awarded to a consulting firm, THK and Associates. A draft scope of the work has been reviewed and commented on, and the final scope and associated fee are forthcoming. The nonprofit grant opportunity. It opened January 1st, closes 4 p.m. January 31st, and it will be awarded in February. Applications are available on the county website, losanimoscounty.net. And if you want, you can call our finance director, Christy Coverley, at 719-845-2564 for more information. $120,000 total is available through the 1A Access Voter Approved Ballot Question of 2020. You'll see that Team Los Animas County is dedicated to securing the infrastructure of our county-owned properties. Prairie Stokes Airport is to be completed in 2022. Some of the projects that are out there at the airport continue with the taxiway project design with construction scheduled for 2023. Another one, develop an industrial park plan. Third one, pave hangar taxiways. Fourth, to install CDOT aeronautics weather cameras. Also, our courthouse will be completed. We've been working on windows, and we're going to be working on HVAC. We worked on the roof, and we worked at securing the foundation. And the electrical upgrades and the windows are being installed as we speak. We're also working on our sidewalk retaining walls, as you guys probably noticed. Looks like it's crumbling, and we're going to work at replacing it, and it's currently out to bid, and the award will be February 1st. Also, we're working on the Fairgrounds Master Plan. In progress with the University of Colorado Denver's University Technical Assistance Program. The draft improvements have been reviewed by staff, and the public comment can be seen on Los Animas County's website under Fairgrounds tab. Further public comment and outreach are still to come. We're also updating our hazardous mitigation plan, our EOC plans. And I'd just like to mention one other thing and put a plug in for our Sheriff's Department. Not only have they dealt with our Los Animas County drug problem and extracting close to 10,000 plants of marijuana illegal grow in Los Animas County, which covers 4,500 square miles. But they have also implemented a ranch watch program to deal with the cattle theft that has been happening here recently. And just a big kudos out to 12 individuals that cover a lot of expanded country, and I'm glad to be working, and they're part of our team, Los Animas County. And that's all I have to add. Thank you.
You know, as you can see, there's been a big emphasis today along criminal activity, opioids, drug activity, from the Department of Human Services all the way down to the police department, the judge, all the different. So it's really all together. So I believe that Los Animas County and the City of Trinidad have good teams working together. I know the City of Trinidad has an excellent staff. Sounds like the county is very supportive of their staff as well. And together, I think we can make our community a better place. So that at this point, if there are any questions that are out there, do we have any questions? None? No questions? I guess we got one question.
And Mayor, we have a list here if you'd like to pass these.
Okay, let me get these and get my glasses.
I got mine.
Says the DA has left the room, so the question goes to Sheriff and Chief Glorio. So 1A has passed twice now. Both times voters were told law enforcement would be get funding also from this. That funding, what funding have you received? So Chief Glorioso, you want to answer that from your part, and we'll get Sheriff Navarrete to answer that?
That's the counties. We don't get funds from that.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and answer that?
We received some of that funding to help with some salaries and some equipment that we were getting from that 1A.
Okay. So what you're saying is, for salaries and equipment is what the funding is used for,
Yeah,
correct?
that's public safety.
Also, Mayor, I can add to that question. The county coroner has received an upgrade in his refrigeration rooms and supplies, and also a brand new vehicle finally working.
Good. Here we have a few other questions here. State delegation question. Holtorf and Simpson. The Front Range Rail Act includes the option to use eminent domain. What is your position regarding eminent domain, and how will you support your position?
Well, Lee, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Well, I've left, Richard, I'm not here. No,
I'm going to jump into this because this has already been brought up. The private property rights of citizens is the foundation and fundamental to not only our system of government, but the foundation of what is the United States of America. It is not and should not be the intent of any special district or any entity to take property from a private citizen or a private entity. Those are fundamental constitutional rights. So that is the basis of my position. There should be very few exceptions in working out agreements with respect to the acquisition of property for these projects. But when there is, and I've told people in other projects, that if you have property that you need to acquire, then there should be a fair market value plus premium offer, and that premium should be generous to that landowner to make it economically incentivized economically for that landowner to not only part with their land, but also consider using those incentive payments to acquire other land, perhaps in the area or in different areas, to continue to do what they do. So that is my position. There should be very few exceptions where eminent domain is considered, and then it needs to be adjudicated in the courts. There are procedures for that. And I know it's a costly process, but the process is important so people can represent themselves. And legally, if the judiciary says, no, you can't have it because the private property is protected, then that is the law. Or also, if the judiciary says, no, we're going to have to acquire this land, then once again, fair market value plus premium and attorney's fees and any other loss should be rewarded to those landowners.
Senator Simpson, do you have any comment?
Similarly, it's trying to strike the right balance, and this is a project in the effort of a good public domain area, but the standard or the bar for reaching eminent domain absolutely has to be the last resort, and much like Richard Holtorf, error on the side of the landowner. It's a little hard for me to imagine, and I supported the bill. I think this is a good idea. I think we need this kind of effort. It may take 20 years before it ever becomes a reality, but this was kind of lay the groundwork to at least make it possible. But again, would find it really difficult and hard to support a position where we actually had to utilize eminent domain, but recognize that that's the balance we have to strike in the effort of promoting public good.
And being a representative of this area on the Rail Commission, we've already had this discussion, and I know the concern that's from the commissioner's part on this is that the Los Angeles County, and I really don't see where eminent domain will come into play in any aspect on this, simply because there's enough frontage road for the rail to be able to utilize. If they need to put another rail track alongside of it, there's plenty of room. So I don't really believe that eminent domain will ever play a part of this. The other part is if anything ever happens, it has concerning and I'll use this as an example. Let's say El Moro decides they want to have a station, which I doubt it'll ever happen, but let's just use that as an example. And the district comprises a 5 mile from I-25 to the east. So let's say they decide they wanted to have a rail station put in El Moro. First thing they would do is they would contact El Moro and any property owners in there and work with them to try to either buy the property, make some incentives to try to help them so that they will, sell or lease, get right away for that purpose. That's probably the only way I could even see that anything would ever happen in Los Angeles County. So I really don't think that eminent domain will ever take any kind of issue, will have any kind of issue here in Los Angeles County as far as that goes. Second item here we have is for a federal delegation, and it's concerning the Front Range, and I'll also mention that, but this is concerning Mr. Bennett. The Front Range rail is completed. There are discussions that the Amtrak Southwest Chief will be diverted at La Junta to Pueblo, bypassing Trinidad, which is currently part of its route. What is Senator Bennett's position on this possible diversion, and how will he support his position?
Well, we don't have I'll say real quick, if this is a proposal and we hear from your county, City of Trinidad, other affected counties that are unified on the Southwest Chief larger financing struggle and the larger needs to upgrade infrastructure there, that's just a matter of, as it unfolds, that's when Michael responds, when he hears from you about those concerns. So right now, our bigger concern is getting New Mexico to buy into their piece of the line and be willing to support the line on the mountain route, which is this old route. So that I would defer to you guys in some of this. I'm not doing a lot of the Southwest Chief politics because I'm mainly in the valley, but if this comes up and this is a proposed route change, we will go to bat for you guys in that respect. Absolutely, Michael will. But there's a lot of other bigger issues with Southwest Chief, you guys, that I think we all want to be mindful of going forward to protect the route as you already have been working on. So I think Michael's basically on standby for that. I think a lot of it right now is being talked about, but I don't know if we have any proposals, but I would put it, as soon as you hear a concern and you think it's valid and you see a proposal or a draft in an EIS or something, or a draft in a proposed plan, we need to hear from the county, we need to hear from the city, we need to hear from La Junta, because La Junta's going to probably share these things. You're going to see other concerns in other parts of the route.
And like I said, being a representative, I've also got some information on that as well. I think whoever asked this question should probably be rest pretty well on this, because here a while back, Amtrak has made a commitment to retain the rail services that are in place right now.
Yes, they did.
So that is something that they made that commitment. So that will be moving forward. And this one here is crossed off. Well, either Mr. Buck's office, Bennett, or Loopers. Has there been a push to bring the Space Force to Colorado Springs, and if so, what's the status? Does anyone of you have any information on that?
I know the first survey had already come out. We're waiting for another one to come out in March. So from that's when the Secretary is going to make kind of a decision. So it's in evaluation phase right now.
Okay. For anybody who could not hear that, it's in the evaluation stage, and it's going to be coming out, when you say March?
Mid-March.
Mid-March.
Yeah.
And they're going to make a decision, I guess, at that point?
Not a final decision.
Okay.
I think it's more of just pushing it down the line, but understanding what it means to retain Space Force in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Basic man.
Okay, next item is for the same three. Is any congressperson aware of any discussion, proposed legislation that will fix cattle marketing, buying power, and require mandatory minimums? If so, can they please state the position and how will they support it?
I was going to see if Travis wanted to, since he hasn't been back yet, but.
Yeah, there has been, and there routinely every year is legislation that seeks to address the cattle market. We've seen this week the Biden administration undertake a new focus on ensuring that the cattle market is being treated more fairly. So we are tied into or watching that effort with the USDA. As far as legislation, Senator Grassley has put forward some legislation that would determine how meat packers are forced to buy in the spot market as opposed to buying in futures like they often do. And there's some mandatory country of origin labeling as well. The Congressman Buck is not co-sponsor on any of that at the moment. Primarily that's happening in the Senate.
There's a piece to that which Travis just touched on that you all should be aware of if you're tracking this. The country of origin labeling mandatory provision is why Michael's not on it. We are listening. He is listening to that piece on the Senate side, but that bill has got a lot of pieces to it that are tough to join, and we know national NCBA, Colorado Cattlemen's, some big players in the Colorado ag lobbying field have concerns about that bill. So
yeah, we spend a lot of our discussions back in August when we were down on our ag tours and then moving forward from there have been on country of origin labeling, and it's a very difficult realm to navigate because of the implications of doing it that we saw back in the early 2000s with country of origin. So it's something that we're watching, and I know the Congressman would support legislation if it wasn't going to be detrimental.
Along the egg, this is not on it, but this is coming from me. We've had, problems with cattle rustling in the county recently, and I read recently that if they take the cattle, let's say to Kansas, that they don't actually have to prove, am I correct, that where that cattle was sold if they take it to a market? So I really believe that is something that maybe the senators and the congressmen can really probably bring forward, how they bring Kansas or any other state that they cannot take cattle to another state without documentation that they can sell it. I think that's something that needs to happen. Okay, this is for also the same three. Educational equity. Studies show that a student's educational accomplishments are achieved, that students' potential income increases. Currently, this political elite, well-to-do and privileged, are able to send their students to the best K-12 schools, while the underserved, disadvantaged, and marginalized students are forced back because of lack of funds. To attend underperforming public schools, what changes do you propose to make to achieve educational equity?
I'm going to pass to the state. Educational, if you don't want to see the federal government weigh in on school districts, you guys, that's cautious. We do to some degree, but it's not something that we prefer to do. So,
and our state constitution is constructed that this is local control and not trying to keep the state out of educational choices is a high priority. And I know that I've seen in 1 year, I've seen small pieces where the state does get involved, but in reality, this should be, that's why we have local school boards, and our Colorado Constitution is very instructive about this is for and intended for local control.
Well, one final question on here, but this is concerning COVID, and I think this is a political football about the birthplace of COVID. So I think we're going to leave it lie. Anyone in the audience, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
If I may, question for our federal delegation. As of this morning, I just received a phone call. What is the congressional delegation doing in stopping the IRS from reporting on any bank account and or savings account over $600? Where is the position of the congressmen and the senators for our constituents of the state of Colorado?
Well, Congressman Buck is opposed to any efforts to have the IRS have that level of intrusion. We are watching it. When it was first reported a couple months ago, our legislature went and looked through, and it was sort of a red herring. Reality, I think what you might be referring to this morning, I saw it, was that transaction through things like Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, are what are going to be reported. That's my understanding from what I read this morning. The congressman just doesn't believe that that's the role of the IRS, and it's dangerously close to what I see.
That's what I see the 1099 can through Venmo as well. So I'm actually talking to our legislature about that as well to see what that actually looks like.
We're tracking it, and honestly, right now, the last I heard was that it had been shelved or it had been pulled back, at least for some level of additional review, and it was coming from the Biden administration, if I recall. I mean, it's an agency proposal, so it's coming from the agency. Michael's role on the finance committee, he should be able to have another role there, but we've definitely been hearing concerns about it, and he has concerns about it. It's really hard right now, quite frankly, to sort out what's real versus what is actually proposed, because there's so many layers to what's being proposed and what's actually passed. So thank you for pointing it out. We are aware of it, and I know right now Michael's pretty concerned about it, but I don't think if it's an administrative proposal, it's not something we vote on. This is a reaction to an administrative agency's actions, in which case we would take a other side, we would approach it from a different side.
Okay. Mr. Dorncamp, I think you had a question?
I've got one for Senator Simpson. If I understood you correctly, you mentioned that property owners who mitigate their properties while Bowie recommends they may be eligible for tax breaks?
Tax credits.
Tax credits?
Yeah.
Is that property tax credits or what type of tax?
State income tax credit.
State income. Okay. Thank you.
We've got a few more questions on criminal justice here. This would be for Chief Orioso and Sheriff Navarrete. It says, with the recently approved legislations, what challenges or opportunities do you anticipate or have experienced with your or within your organizations? Chief?
I think hiring police officers is going to be more and more difficult going forward. It's a challenging career as it is, and they're putting a lot more restrictions on what's going to happen going forward. I think that's going to be one of the obstacles we're facing. I think another one is the way they lower the criminal offenses as far as the penalties for those. That could be a challenge going forward. So those would be my two concerns with it.
Okay. Sheriff Navarrete?
I agree with the chief. It is making it more difficult to recruit and retain people to want to do this work with all the defunding initiatives that have been coming out. The one big bill that's affecting both of us is the 217, which is the integrity bill. I do believe a lot of it needs to change, but it's putting a lot of financial pressure on our county and other counties as well when we're smaller. But thankfully through grants where we've been able to obtain a new body cam system and other equipment. But it does present a huge obstacle in continuing to provide service and to keep people that want to do this profession.
Yeah. You know, and we've had several discussions on this within council as well. And policing has become very difficult, and I really feel bad for the people that are in this profession. Because it's like they're walking around with a target on their back these days, and it's very, very sad that that's the case. This last time that I was running for election, I had a few people ask me, how do you go about defunding the police department? I said, you know, first of all, that's a no-go. I'm sorry, but that I don't believe in defunding. First of all, the city of Trinidad funds our own police department. We don't get any money from state or federal agencies for funding of any kind, correct?
That's good.
So, and it's probably the same for the county. So, as far as that goes, while I'm in office, it'll be hell to pay if somebody comes up and wants to try to defund the police department. Sorry to say that.
Mayor, I got a question that comes on a text message regarding funding for fiber optic. I think you mentioned it that the agreement just came down today, the determination. Could you repeat that?
Yes, actually, so do they want to know about this particular legislation?
We just got it. So the question was, what about funding for fiber optic in our community?
Okay, so all I was speaking to was there was two different references from those of you at the municipal and county level about the state and local funding coming from the rescue plan, and that those rules were draft, they were finalized today. That's what was finalized today, so I can't speak to the
So once we look at the draft, we can see
Yes.
we can spend it locally. It's about 6 months
And-
from when the infrastructure, so we're still looking at April to really
Yeah.
understand
And then
what,
from
how that
Nola?
process is gonna happen.
Okay, and to really cap this off, I've been working with, actually with the state, and Mike and I have had discussions with CDOT. As everyone knows, there is a line that's being placed along I-25. So we brought this to CDOT, to ask them if at some point we can tie into that project, and they said yes. So what's going to happen, there's a couple of things that need to happen. First of all, that line will be live sometime, I think, in the latter part of, I think, somewhere around June time. At that point, we can tie in. There's one obstacle that we need to get over. Several years back, I think there was a House Bill 152 that was put in front of the people. This was into the entire state of Colorado. What it did was it hogtied all the various communities in Colorado to some of the current providers. So from my understanding, I think 90% of the communities in the state of Colorado have done away with House Bill 152 in their particular areas. We still have not done that. So that's the one thing that we need to do. So we will be bringing that in the form in this next election cycle that comes up, this next cycle. After that, we will be able to tie in. We've had some discussion with CDOT how this will all occur. It'll provide a better service at more than likely a lesser cost. So, and of course, now I've also talked to Tara Marshall. There's also some money from DOLA that's available to help pay for this, and I guess this additional legislation that may be coming down. So I think there's going to be a huge opportunity for us to be able to increase our broadband capabilities in Trinidad for sure, and also in around the county, probably for you guys as well. I know that Mike and I have talked about, and we've had discussions with our IT director, is that whenever we do tie into this, is that we will concentrate on probably the business community first, and then eventually leak that off into individual private ownerships to homes. So that'll be happening. Probably going to be about a year down the road, correct, Mike? If it all goes well.
All goes
All goes well for a year.
All the funding comes down and, yeah.
Okay. So we need to get those rules. Now that we know the rules.
This is different though, and you're talking about infrastructure funds to be used for this?
Possibly.
So you want to make sure it's a project you're doing with CDOT, that the TPR is also ranking high, right?
Sure.
So there's more, there's the municipal project development concurrent with CDOT, make sure the staff is ready to go, and then you want to make sure that your TPR agrees with you and has it highly ranked if it's not already on the list.
And,
I defer to the transportation experts here, but.
and also from what I understand is in order for us to be able to utilize funds, it has to be an enterprise zone. We have to own the broadband. Because if we partner with Comcast or another entity,
The local government has to
yeah,
own it.
so the local government has to own
Sounds
it.
right,
Yeah.
the cogs of the government.
That's true. Okay, here's another question. This is for the police department and the sheriffs. They're given a magic wand. How would you address crime prevention? A, stricter or less strict enforcement of laws, stiffer or more lenient penalties, or other? Chief.
So I think the deterrent has to be in the crime. The penalty has to follow whatever the crime is. That's one way. Magic wand, man, I would think is to keep a core officers that we could keep trained. I constantly lose officers. We're playing back and forth with the sheriff's office, trying to keep officers. They go up north. They're given $5,000 bonuses to sign on to their departments. It's going to be a struggle in the future to have not only officers on the street, but qualified officers with experience. You can't put a price tag on an officer that has 10 years experience, and because they're taking those officers left and right, going north. So as a community, we're going to have to do something to keep those officers here in Trinidad.
Senator Simpson, before you leave, I want to make a comment about that. If there's something that you guys can do at the state level on a yearly basis, somehow, some legislation that will give rural areas, because the rural areas are the ones that struggle with being able to fund police departments and sheriff's department, to get additional funding to be able to meet some of the big dollars that are being paid at the bigger communities.
No, I got to, I'm supposed to be in Pueblo at 2 o'clock.
Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
So Mayor, even going with that, I have an officer that I just spoke to here 2 days ago that was with my departments now in Commerce City. They're facing the problem as well. It's just entirely hard to find officers, and I think we're just going to have to sweeten the pot to draw these people back into the profession. Because right now, it's a scary profession to not only be in, but to enter. And you can't pick up a newspaper on any given day and not see some kind of lawsuit coming forward, not seeing some kind of police bashing, so to speak. So it's going to be tough, and I don't know how we change the culture back to where it's a respected profession, because right now there's not a lot of respect for our profession.
I'm going to step in here, Mayor Rico, if you'll allow me. I'll wait for your permission.
Go ahead. Go right ahead.
Are you muted there? Demand that qualified immunity be reinstated for law enforcement officers. A large part of your problem is the bad legislation that was passed and signed by the governor that took the top cover and the protection from law enforcement officers and made them civilly liable to do their jobs. And I know dozens of law enforcement officers, including even my own brother, considered retirement, although he talked himself out of it because of that, what I would call horrible legislation against law enforcement, blaming the law enforcement officers for the hard jobs that they do. We've got to stop attacking law enforcement. There might be one bad apple in the barrel, but we need to stop collectively attacking our law enforcement professionals and the profession through bad legislation. I don't know how you change that trajectory, but that needs to start. If you do that, then you'll have more people wanting to get back into law enforcement or even enter into a field. But who in their right mind wants to get into a profession that right away, if you do something wrong, you are liable to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of liability just because you're trying to do your job and it's a very difficult job. So that's the first thing we need to do in this state. It's not all about how much money's out there. The reason the price of law enforcement is going up is because simple economics and supply and demand. You've lost so many law enforcement professionals because of the bad legislation Colorado was passed, as if those law enforcement officers were all at fault. So let's change that culture and let's start trying to reverse bad legislation, and you will see everything get better in law enforcement. I will tell you, as your state representative, I'm sick and tired of people picking on the law enforcement officers, saying they're the problem, and we need to reimagine law enforcement and get rid of those folks. I've got family in the business, and they are good people trying to do a very difficult job, and I will stop right there. But it needs to come from the grassroots all the way to the governor's office.
Okay, thank you very much, and just to let you know, the city of Trinidad, our insurance agency is CIRSA, and I was at a recent meeting with CIRSA, and the big legislation that they're talking about is being able to sue a policeman or a sheriff, and according to our CIRSA agent, is they will cover those expenses for our police department, because I think they can be sued up to $25,000 per individual, which I think is what the cap is, but our CIRSA will cover those expenses. Mr. Navarrete, do you have any?
Not much further to add to that, other than that we do have difficulty keeping qualified officers.
Yeah.
A lot of it is the legislation. It has been really bad on this profession.
Right.
But you have to keep pushing through that and finding ways to keep going. And here in this county, nearly 5,000 square miles, it's difficult. So our push, if we could, is to expand in the future staffing to get out in these areas a little more. We have to do a little bit of planning on where we target, where we go, just because of the terrain. But I reached out to the community. Ranch Watch, as Commissioner House did bring up, that I did fail to mention, is we do have that program where the ranching community and the community in general are getting together to network, trying to see if this is the same kind of issues are happening on their property. More eyes out here for us, and that's what we're targeting now, is a lot more help from the community.
Well, there's a few other questions here, but I think a lot of the questions that are further on down here have already been answered by many of the speakers. First of all, and last of all, basically, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know we got off to a rocky start with what happened, and I just wanted to especially thank our presenters who are here with us today, taking time from what you typically do. I know you people are very busy with who you represent. County Commission, thank you for being here. Any of our city officials that are here. And again, I want to thank our city staff for putting together this event today. And thank you for your participation. I know that it's been kind of a long event, but I think there's a lot of information that you probably have received that you can take home with you and speak freely about it. Thank you again for being here.